Religious abuse and religious family trauma is really difficult for me to talk about because I come from a family who are Christians, whether that's Catholicism or Pentecostal or Baptist. We are a Christian family. We don't subscribe to that really legalistic view of Christianity, but we do believe in God and we do believe in faith. We also believe in scripture, and we share our faith as needed, not in the overly religious way that you're probably thinking, where we go out with Bibles and we knock down all barriers and we make sure everybody knows about God. We do it with wisdom and we show a heart of love and compassion. We go from there. But there are some religious categories and some religious groups that really take this too far. And when that happens, you may start to, pull away little by little because you don't want to be sucked into this indoctrination that can either be exaggerated in a good way or exaggerated in a bad way. It's the exaggeration of religion in a bad way by saying things that are not true, by stretching religious context or textbooks. All of that can lead to religious trauma or religious PTSD. So in today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about that within the context of families and how religious trauma can impact you. But before we jump in, let me briefly introduce myself in case you are new to the channel. My name is Tamara. I'm an internationally and board certified trauma therapist. I'm licensed in mental health. I specialize in treating children, teens, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma. Right in my private practice. Let's jump in. This is a hard video for me to do, and one of the reasons why is because it's so complex, and there's a lot of dynamics to religious family trauma. And the other piece of why this is complex for me is I don't want to give the wrong impression. I'm going to try to be very careful in how I discuss this topic because there's a lot of religions and a lot of people who subscribe to religion that this video can offend. But I do want to put a disclaimer out there that that is not my intention. My intention is to highlight the overly religious and religious traumatic experiences that certain people within a family can experience. There's a lot going on in families where religion is at the core, and two specific things I want you to keep in mind as we go through this video. One is disillusionment, which can happen when you're so engulfed in religion that all you see around you and all you see through your lens is religion. Disillusionment, right here on the screen, can occur. And that can occur for many reasons. One is you are overly invested, you in general are overly invested in the religion. You've had wonderful things happen to you, which has kind of reinforced your religiosity. Or you have been forced to engage in religion out of guilt, shame, and fear. And so once you've been kind of forced or scared into religion, that's when disillusionment can happen. Some people, when they are going through that disillusionment stage, they can also become psychotic. They can start dealing with hallucinations, hearing and seeing things that are of a spiritual nature. And they can also deal with delusions, false beliefs that are held to be true in the face of evidence that it's not true. That's something else that can happen. The second word I want you to keep in mind is brainwashing. I talk a lot on this channel about brainwashing, disillusionment, and indoctrination. I do it in many different ways. But on this channel, my videos are always looking at what has happened to you as the victim. And so if you have been brainwashed by religion, and you are now kind of coming through that and you are realizing the trauma that you have experienced, then this video is for you. Now, let me just say that an individual by the name of Marlene Winnell, hopefully I'm saying her last name correctly, she came up with the term religious trauma syndrome. Religious trauma syndrome. And the idea behind her work was that there are some people who have been forced into sex, SECTS, have also been forced into religious organizations, retreats, and all kind of clubs that can really thwart your identity as a person. It can also cause you to hide your feelings, your thoughts, your behaviors, and everything that maybe you're struggling with, substance abuse, sex addiction, mental illness, the list goes on. It's going to cause you to hide that because the religious environment in which you are in is promoting the view that everybody is perfect. This has to be godly. God doesn't accept mistakes. You are unclean. You are sinful. You aren't worthy, okay? And the only reason I'm doing air quotes is to make it very clear that these are things that have been said. And I've been around them through clients, my own family, friends, coworkers, researchers who study this. These are things that are heard. And it can cause brainwashing, and you may begin to feel indoctrinated. And so that's why Marlene Winell did some research on it, and she came up with the term religious trauma syndrome. Now, for me, I'm going to highlight a couple of ideas here. I think one thing that is often at the foundation of overly religious individuals is groupthink. I talk about groupthink right up here in this video where I talk about the most recent events of today. And basically the idea behind groupthink is that you have an in-group and an out-group. An in-group and an out-group. The out-group are those people who don't have the same theories, behaviors, emotions, belief systems, values, all of that. That's the out-group, right? They don't belong because they don't share your beliefs, your faith, your religion, your values, the list goes on. The in-group in the religious category are individuals who attend church. They believe a certain religious theory. They are very indebted to that theory. They will become 10 times more religious as they learn more about the religion, right? Because some people really do study and they try to get as much information on the religion as they can. So that creates that in-group, that group think, right? These individuals may also have sacrificed things. I know in the Christian religion, Pentecostals, Baptists, Catholicism, we have to sacrifice something in order to please God. And we have to sacrifice our pleasure, our thoughts and feelings that may not be like God's. We also have to sacrifice a lot of our time, our free time, right? Christians, Baptists, Pentecostals, Catholicism, Catholics, if you will. This particular area, just from my own personal and professional experience, is that, there's a lot of strict rules and regulations that aren't in the Bible. And there's also a lot of strict rules and regulations that churches create and religious retreats create and pastors create and bishops and leaders. And so sometimes it's hard to tease apart what's real and what's false, what's truly of God and what's just man's religion. They're legalistic, pious, righteous view of things that has nothing to do with God, faith, miracles, love, compassion, the list goes on. So if you share the same values and the same thoughts and feelings as you would in a religion, that is groupthink, right? There's an outsider and there's an insider, and you're the insider. How can this impact you, especially if your religion is strict and makes you feel ashamed and guilty and unclean and sinful? What kind of damage can this do to you? Can it stir post-traumatic stress? Can it stir fear of religion where you go the complete opposite? Can it cause you to run away from bishops and pastors and leaders? And, what can this do to you? Well, we're going to talk about that right now. The first thing that I want you to think about is, if you've been engulfed in some kind of religion that has been unhealthy for you, it's been overly religious, it's been imprisoning, it's made you feel like you need to blame yourself for things, it's made you feel like you are miles apart from God, it makes you feel like you don't measure up. The first thing I want you to consider, and this happens for people who have been traumatized by the religion, is a fear of leaving the religion because you're afraid that you're going to mess up or that you're going to walk away from something and be punished. And so, this is a tricky thing that I'm mentioning here because in the Christian religion, in other religious categories like Muslims, Indians, there's a theory that you do have to come away from those things that got you in trouble. Drinking, sexual experiences, addiction, gambling, all of those things, right? Dressing provocatively, all of that. there's this belief that you have to come away from that in order to be the religious and faithful individual that you need to be. I'm highly in support of that. But where the issue comes in is when you lose your complete identity. You feel imprisoned and trapped, and you don't have a mind to think on your own because of what that religion has done to you, what that pastor has done to you, that religious leader, that parent, that family member. And so you really do kind of shrivel up and go inside, and you can, and some people do, continue to participate in that religion, and they lose their identity completely. And so that can result in post-traumatic stress disorder. You have to have a stressor to be diagnosed with PTSD, but then you also have to have that physiological reaction and that fight or flight mode all the time, and that avoidance of the thing that makes you feel bad. The next thing is chronic stress of leaving after you've left. So when you leave a religious faith, especially if your entire family is engulfed in this, you most likely will feel some kind of post-traumatic stress. Maybe not PTSD, maybe not complex PTSD, but some kind of post-traumatic stress where you find yourself running away from your religion and you feel safe, but then you start having negative thought patterns that maybe you did something wrong, that you're going to be cursed, that you're going to be, punished, that you're sinful, that you're unclean, and all of those negative thought patterns without an ability to say to yourself, I am still lovable. I just have to find my way. When you're not able to say that and understand that, and all you see is that you've done something wrong, then that is religious trauma, because you can't get yourself out of that mode of feeling blamed and condemned and shamed, if that makes sense. Feeling compelled by fear to stay involved in the religion is another component of religious trauma. You should never feel compelled out of fear, shame, guilt, being blamed of staying in a religion. You should always want to be in a religion because your heart is drawing you, because God's drawing you, because you want to know more about this religiosity, right? You want to know more about your history. You want to learn more about the philosophical foundations of God and if you're a Christian, of Jesus Christ, right? You want to learn more about that. You want to soak it all up because your soul wants it. But if you feel compelled to stay in a religion out of fear, out of fear of being condemned by the people who run that religious organization or church, that's a problem. You're basing your reality on their opinion of you and not how God sees you and not how your own heart sees you, right? So that's a problem. So you never want to feel compelled by feelings of blame, self-blame, shame, and guilt or fear to stay in a religion. That's imprisonment. The next thing is a loss of connection with other people and yourself. When you find yourself pulling away from that religion, but you're also pulling away from your family, you're also pulling away from your spouse, you're pulling away from your friends, and now you're withdrawing and isolating, depression, anxiety, isolation, learned helplessness, all of those things are likely to follow because you're not having an experience that's healthy of trying to figure out who you are. You're now in a state of complete fight or flight mode. And you may leave that religion, but now your whole body is experiencing the stress and anxiety associated with leaving. And so then you can't really grow and see who you are because you're stuck. The next thing is indoctrination and legalism. Here's the definition of legalism right here on the screen. And when you start to feel controlled or entrapped by legalism, run. That is not a healthy situation, and it's not something that's going to help you get better. Fear of abandonment is something else as well that you may experience from religious trauma. Fear of being abandoned and fear of abandoning your religious group, your church, your bishop, your pastor, right? And so having those feelings of abandonment, like you've been left all alone to figure this out on your own, or feeling like you've abandoned people that relied on you or saw you in a certain light, is a lot of personal distress that you are placing on yourself. And that in and of itself can trigger a fight or flight mode, central nervous system dominant. It can also kick on cortisol, which kicks on a lot of bodily functioning that happens when you are under intense stress. And so if that is prolonged for long periods of time and it doesn't end, we're looking at PTSD or chronic post-traumatic stress. The other thing The other thing is mismatched values. Now, you may start to feel that your values and your church or your religious group or organization, your values don't mesh anymore. And so you may start to feel guilty for even considering that your values don't mesh anymore. And that is like a mind game, you know? It sinks you in that pond of guilt and shame and fear. And so those are really all the components that you need to experience religious trauma. So feeling like your values are mismatched and not knowing how to look at that in a healthy, balanced way, and you begin to feel trapped or like you're losing connection with your soul and your heart and your mind, that's a problem. I'll share a brief story with you about my mom. My mom was a developing Christian, and she was really excited about God and learning about scripture, and she studied all the time. She went to a particular church. My grandfather is a Christian pastor, and she went to one of his friends' churches. She was there all the time, night and day, every Wednesday, every Sunday, every Saturday. There would always be a service, a youth group, or whatever. My mom was about maybe 30-something years old at this point, and she bought a picture. It was of a young baby with a tear, and it was a poetic form of, looking at suffering and pain and just really struggling in life. And this pastor and his wife came into my mom's home. This was before I was born. She had my brother, and the pastor, she tells me, looked at her and then looked at the picture and says, "You know what, sister? I think you need to take that off the wall. It shows defeat, and it's really causing you to believe that you're helpless." And my mom, she told me, she was like, "What?" It didn't mean that to her at all. And he really pressured her to take that picture off her bedroom wall. He thought it was defeat, and he thought that it was negative, when in fact my mom thought it was a real reflection of pain. So that's the kind of religious fear and imprisonment that can happen even to you and people that you know. And dealing with that repeatedly over time can really hurt you. Thankfully, my mom, she had a pretty prophetic dream. She had a dream where all of her church members that she had sat amongst for months were on this side of the street, and she was all by herself on another side of the street. And she told me it was like symbolic of her walking away from that imprisonment and truly finding God on her own. And she raised me as a Christian. I still walk with Christianity in my heart and my soul and my mind. It makes me the compassionate person that I am. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen for everybody. If my mom forced me to go to church, couldn't wear pants, because that's also a part of religion. Sometimes you're only allowed to wear skirts, wear earrings, lipstick, makeup. One time my mom was told to wipe her makeup off. It wasn't appropriate for church life. My mom took a picture of herself, and she had red lipstick on, nice little hoop earrings, and she had some eyebrow pencil on, and they told her to take it off. This is the kind of religious imprisonment I'm talking about, and it can cause post-traumatic stress disorder if you're not careful. We're definitely going to come back to this video, guys, and I'm going to come back to this topic and give you some more information on this. I think this is a very powerful topic, and it's not good enough for me to just give you one video on this. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for being with me in today's video. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to stick around with us, and that bell button so you get notifications every single time we post something online on YouTube. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.